Hey everyone, it's Rabbi Shmuel Paul, and I just got through with my morning prayers, and I want to make a quick video for you today. This is the channel where we take ancient Jewish wisdom and we apply it to today's problems, to understand them, to solve them, and to make this world into a godly place. So the problem that we're going to deal with today is theology. Who is right? There's thousands of books on theology, thousands of opinions on what God actually is. So let's deal with the greatest most popular belief about God, and that is the view of Christianity, because that is the most popular religion. Christianity believes in a Trinity. So they believe that there's God, the Holy Ghost, and the devil. There's Jesus, who's also God. There's so many gods. And this in Judaism is called shituf. It means that God exists, but he has partners. And the problem is that Jews have the 7 Noahide laws to keep, and we've spoken about those many times. One of those laws is not to worship idols. So according to some sages, shituf, a partnership, to worship a partnership, is like worshiping idols. You're not really believing in the true God, you're worshiping false gods. Other sages say it's okay because you are actually praying to the right God, you are just also praying to other things, and that doesn't delegitimize your true prayer to the one God. One thing is for sure, though, if Christians want to keep the 7 Noahide laws well, if they want to keep it properly, if they want to keep it in the best sense possible, they should abandon the belief in the Trinity and instead adapt the Kabbalistic belief in God, which is the dictums of ancient Judaism. The Kabbalah is the mysticism within Judaism. And the mysticism is actually based on legal text of Maimonides called Mishnah Torah. And he says that everything exists only because of the truth of God's existence. In other words, nothing really exists but for God. It's a really important point. The atheists struggle with the question, why is everything here? Because if there's no God, there's no creator, why isn't there just nothing? They can weasel around that, but they don't really have a good answer to that question. If there's nothing, there should be nothing. But Judaism takes this all a step further. Jewish mysticism tells us that it is not only that everything exists because of God, but rather that only God exists. God is the only true existence. So we could say that this table is God, this computer is God, this tissue box is God, this USB port is God. At first, people used to think that their hand is just a hand, and then they realized that it's cells, and then they realized the cells have DNA, and they realized the DNA has atoms, and they realized the atoms have quarks. So we know that you can look at one thing in many different ways. There are different truths with the lowercase t that you can look at things. You can look at it as being cells, DNA, whatever you want to look at it as, you can look at it, and you're not wrong. You are correct that it is those things. So the truth is, the same is true of God. If we go deeper into quarks, into all these subatomic particles, we will actually find God. And when you go deep enough, you're like finding the gems, and then you have to bring the gems back home with you. So when you go deep enough, you find out that it's God, it's all infinite, and it's all unlimited possibility, and that's what God is. But then we take it back, and we bring it back to our current reality and say that this computer is actually an example of that. And we'll talk more about examples and rules, but we're taking it back to our current reality and saying this unlimited potential that we found in reality is actually exists within every aspect of the reality that we see. So we actually find the gems in the depths, we dig and dig and dig until we find them, and then we bring the gems back to our current reality. I hope that makes sense. But the bottom line is the Jewish understanding is that everything is God. The Kabbalah is dedicated to explaining this, and it takes years of study, and most people, even after years, still don't understand it. But I'm going to give you one small example of how to understand the fact that everything is really God, even though it looks like a bunch of different stuff. So let's say we're going to use the example of an example. That's going to be our example. Like when people say that people stop at red lights. That's the rule. Then they give you an example of a person on Elm Street that stopped at a red light in a black car. Now, is that an example of the rule? No. That's actually the rule itself. The rule was referring to these specific instances of people stopping their cars in front of red lights. Without these specific instances, there would be no rule. So rules only exist because of the examples, and examples only exist because of the rule. They are one. They are completely one and united. So the example is not just an example, it is an example of the rule. It is the rule at play. It is the rule acting itself out. And it's similar with God. He is the creator of this world, and that's the rule. But as an example, he also created the tree that is outside, and that is creation. And it is not an example of creation. This is actually what God had in mind when he said that I'm going to be a creator. And the same is true of God himself. Being God means being king over the universe. So every time you do a good thing, he's king over us. And that what we're saying is that God himself is king over us. And there's no difference between saying that God exists and that this table is God, because that's what we mean when we say God. God is a king. God rules over us. And when he rules over us, that's not just an example of what he does. That is him doing it. That is God. This table is God. When we use the table for the right purposes, that becomes God, although it was already God. But we are bringing that godly essence out into reality. So, looks like we're recording, and that's good. We can go way deeper into this, and God willing, we will on this channel. We have plenty of time to keep going deeper and deeper into the mysteries of the universe and Jewish theology. But this is the first analogy. This is the example, that the example is one with the rule. So too, everything is one with God. Everything is really God, and it's all God was meant to be, is what exists in this world. When we become one, when we start believing in the proper Jewish theology, and we believe that only God exists, everything in front of me exists, and everything in front of you is only God, absolutely everything is God, including yourself, when everything is believed to be God in the same way, and we all believe it together, the world will become united. And that is what we really want. It's not an intellectual pursuit so much as it is a way to bring people together. When we all believe that everything is one, and Buddhists have their own belief about how everything is one, and that's good. But the more we believe that everything is one and that only God exists and there's only one existence and we are all the same, then we'll all become one, and it will culminate with world peace. May it happen speedily in our days. God bless.